Hi, my name is Peter Knight. I want to welcome you to this series of videos where we have a look at the factors that influence where a golf ball goes and why it goes there. There are a number of different things that are going to influence the ball flight. The first is the type of equipment that you use. It has a minor effect unless your equipment is drastically wrong. So for most players, except for the very best players, changing the equipment is not going to make a massive difference. The second thing is physical abilities or limitations, which as a coach I need to allow for in my client. The third is our instinctive reaction to a shot that doesn't go where we want it to go. The subsequent shot, we're going to try and do something that will improve the flight of the ball. So if I hit a shot that goes well off to the right of the target, for example, then the next shot, my instinct takes over and I might try and do something that avoids the ball going to the right. But by far the most influential factor is the concept that I have of why a golf ball goes where it goes. And the things that we're going to look for in this series are understanding what those factors are. The first of them is club face. I need to be able to control the club face during the stroke and especially at impact. The influence that the club face has is that if I strike the ball and my club face isn't square, it's going to influence its initial direction. So in other words, let's say I hit a shot and my club face is aimed left when I strike the ball, then the ball will start to the left of the target. Now whether it curves in the air from there is going to be influenced by other factors, but the initial direction is going to be determined by my club face. So the first thing I need to do is to understand how I control the club face. And the best and most obvious way is by holding the club correctly. So when I hold the club correctly in my right hand, I want the club to run from the crease in my palm here, almost at the base of my little finger, across to the first joint in my forefinger. So if I'm holding the club up and the back of my hand is facing the target, then the club runs from the crease in my palm across to the first joint in my forefinger. And the other thing that I'm doing when I'm holding the club up here is that the bottom edge of the club is running straight up and down. So when I look down at the back of my hand here, I can see the first two or perhaps even the first three knuckles on the back of my left hand. My left thumb, if the top of my grip is 12 o'clock, then my left thumb is running straight down the grip at about 1 o'clock. When I put my right hand on, I want the joints of these two fingers here to run right underneath the grip, so that when I close my hand, my left thumb is now going to fit underneath the fleshy part of my right thumb. So when I hold the club here, my right thumb now is sitting slightly left of center on the grip, and the line formed between the thumb and forefinger on both hands are pointed up somewhere between my right shoulder and about my right collarbone. So holding the club correctly is absolutely critical. The next thing I want to do is I want to become familiar with what it feels like to have the club move correctly during the swing. So when I've got myself set up here, as the club swings back, a thought that I can have is when the club is parallel to the ground in this position here, I want the toe of the club to be pointed almost directly into the air. It might be a tiny bit forward. For the sake of simplicity, let's call it straight up in the air. So when I swing the club back, I want to practice swinging the club back with the face of the club pointing to the ground. I want to practice swinging back with the face of the club pointed to the sky. And the reason that I'm doing that is so that when I look to get somewhere between the two, I'm going to have the club in the correct position. It may seem odd to actually move the club incorrectly, but what it does is it actually brings a familiarity to me so that when I'm swinging the club back and through, if it's not correct, then I might be able to sense what is not correct about it. The next thing that I want to do is when the club swings through, after impact, after I've struck the ball, when the club swings through to about this point here, the toe of the club is again almost pointed straight up in the air. And I can go through the same routine I did in the backswing, which is feeling like when the club swings through, what's it like to have the club face pointed to the sky? What's it like to have the club face pointed to the ground? what's it like to have the club halfway between the two. And what that does is moving from this point here as I'm approaching the ball to this point here after I've struck the ball, I can get a sense of how my hands, how the club face is going to work during the swing. So that starts to give me some good control over what the club face does during the swing. Have a look at the next video, and what we're going to explore is the influence of path and how that's important during the swing and what effect it has.